All right, well, I've got 2 o'clock on my screen, so I think we'll get started in the interest of everyone's time. Thank you all for joining us. We certainly had a lot of interest in this webinar and the series as a whole. We may have people trickle in as the session gets going here, but that's okay as well. My name is Danica Martin, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm a CASS leadership consultant working on this project related to proactive strategies for managing aggressive student behavior. And so I'd like to welcome you to the session webinar. That's a new term, sessionar. I think that's going to catch on. The second webinar in our series, and this topic today is about evidence-based strategies for de-escalation and intervention. And so as we get started, I would like to invite everyone to take a moment to acknowledge the land where you find yourself today. On the screen is CASS's land acknowledgement. But on a personal level, I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge that I have the privilege of living and working and playing on Treaty 7 territory. And I'm grateful to be able to acknowledge that land and share the land with all the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who came before me and still frequent these lands. And so on that note, we'll get started. This afternoon's agenda is fairly simple. I'll take just a few moments to set the stage for the topic. And then we'll hear stories of practice from a team from Medicine Hat Public School Division. And I'll let them introduce themselves when we get to their section. And then we have representation from Wolf Creek Public Schools, and I'll let Irene introduce herself at her time as well. We'll embed some reflection and discussion between our stories of practice as well, so you'll have some time in some breakout rooms to have some conversations with your colleagues as well. This series certainly addresses many of the SLQS and LQS competencies. They're listed on the screen for your reference and information. As an aside, I'll share this slide deck out with you after the webinar is over. And you'll also receive a link to the recording of the webinar once it's edited and processed. So watch for that in your email. You are, of course, eligible for 1.5 credits in the CEP program for attending today's webinar. As many of you know, this is webinar 2 in a 3-part series, and our final webinar is next Wednesday, December 3rd at the same time. Learning guides will be produced for all of these webinars, and they'll be published on the CASS website, and they'll be highlighted in CASS Connects once they're ready and published. So if you're interested in those, you can watch for that as well. The outcomes of the series as a whole are on the screen here, and I won't take time to read these. They were in the registration. I'm sure you're all familiar with them. But we hope that this webinar series will provide you with time to reflect and consider and learn about proactive and reactive strategies for managing aggressive student behavior in your school authorities. I know particularly that today's stories of practice will definitely provide you with some different ways and different approaches to responding and reacting to aggressive student behaviors and de-escalating and building understanding and capacity in your system. Just to mention, and I know you're all familiar with this as well, but we are certainly grounded in policy and legislation. In particular, we know that the Education Act has several sections related to providing safe and caring school environments. Section 33.3 talks about codes of conduct. And so refer you to that. Alberta Education's inclusive ed policy also includes 6 principles of inclusive education, understanding that it may be soon under review and revision with the action team's report that came out on Friday. Many of you are very familiar with the Continuum of Supports document, but I always like to highlight it because there are always new people in CASS and at these webinars who may not be familiar with that valuable resource. Particularly in the area of behavior and today's topic, a couple of policies that will apply, whether they're specifically referred to or not. When we talk about de-escalating and intervening on student behavior, we need to be mindful of those standards for seclusion and physical restraint and the guidelines for timeout, as well as the proactive side, the positive behavior supports work that's out there from Alberta Education. And so on that quick note, setting the stage, I will turn the mic over to our team from Medicine Hat Public School Division for our first story of practice.
Yeah, thank you, Danica, for having us here. Appreciate the opportunity. We'll introduce the team in just a bit, but a little bit about Medicine Hat Public School Division. Medicine Hat Public School Division serves approximately 6,800 students with 17 schools, a diverse population, and we work to promote an inclusive mindset as well as optimal learning environments. And to do that, we've gone down the road of generative dialogue, collaborative response, universal design for learning, some of the areas that we focused on. And the alternative learning team, or the BEST team, started in 2017-18. It has morphed over that time. It's had 2 teachers, 2 educational assistants, occupational therapists, and really designed at the beginning to look at our elementary context with a push-in model. So we were looking for a need at the elementary to allow teachers the opportunity to go to like a higher level, a balcony perspective, to provide a resource that could come in and provide time for reflection, support, and someone just to bounce ideas off to walk along in the process. And so the team, again, as I've said, has adjusted over that time. We want to provide that space for people to have reflection and cognition, and really to provide a trusting resource that can come in and walk alongside. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Carla Carrier, who's the Executive Director of Learning, and she's going to talk a little bit about the team here in a bit, as well as some of the key principles.
Thank you, Cody. Excited to join today and share some of our journey with our alternative learning team in Medicine Hat Public. So we have had 4 universal goals that we've been working on in a division for the last about 8 years. We're at the end of our 4-year cycle again, where we'll look at these goals and assurance again with our trustees. But some of the things that our universal goals really do allow us to anchor the work and provide a foundation for that work of the alternative team, grounding it in optimal learning environments, part of that in which we look at impactful instruction and engaged learning cultures as well, thinking and acting inclusively, and our culture of wellness. So those were really grounding principles and goals in order for us to set the foundational work with our alternative learning team. We were really looking at a way to address the increasing complexities in our elementary schools, and we had a desire to reflect on how can system supports work with our teams and help to develop more increased capacity within the school, so that when we push in support, that capacity is there and we haven't lost the work of the system, that we instead create that ripple effect. Some of the things that we have noticed or have thought about when we are beginning the work and can identify as the foundational principles of our alternative team's work is that it's important to build trust quickly with our schools. We're in for pretty short cycles of time, approximately 2 weeks. And so our team does need to quickly establish relationships with the people they're working with, the admin team, the teacher, the educational assistants. So that's an important element, building those trust factors. We have definitely relied on effective feedback structures during a coaching model. We do use a coaching model during this stint of time that we support schools with their complex students that they refer to us for support. And that coaching model means that throughout the whole time that they're there, we really do need to engage in goal setting, observations, data collection, progress monitoring. We have definitely worked with the collaborative response model in order to assist us in this reflective process and goal setting. And it's important to empower school teams and build internal capacity. And so while we're there and we can model and support the work and guide and coach, we really want to empower school teams to continue the work once we exit, so that they can take what they've learned with the students that we've worked with and the team we've worked with, and then carry that forward to other students with complexities in planning within their own school teams. Looking forward, some of the things that we want to continue working on within this model and framework, and that we have begun already, we've increased communication and planning between our instructional coaching team, so our team that works on instructional and curriculum side, as well as our team of teachers that works within social emotional learning and this complexity team. That's been an important realization, that integration of thinking about the whole program for a student, not just what social emotional needs need to be addressed when the alternative team is there, but what instructional programming supports differentiated instruction can also be part of the whole plan. Another thing that we have understood and that we're continuing to think through is we're refining how we're approaching the collaborative response model. We start each coaching cycle that the team comes in for with a referral with a PTM, a program team meeting. We identify goals and work with the team to understand what programming has been in place already and how we can continue that work together. We need to make sure that through that whole time, there's an established pathway to reflecting, debriefing, in order to make sure that we continue to provide programming and support along the continuum supports. And the collaborative response model has definitely been a powerful framework in order to help us accomplish that work. It's been apparent to us that we can see the deep connection between instructional practice, classroom routines, addressing complexities, planning for targeted supports. And one of the things that we want to continue to explore is how we can integrate that work together with our teams. I'll let you click me forward, Cody. So joining Cody and I today are members of our alternative learning team. Our team consists of 4 members from our educational staff, and then a member from a contracted service that we use for occupational therapy. So we have 2 teachers, certified teachers on our team, Jennifer Hay and Rachel Lesko, who have joined us here today and will share more about the team's work and specifically what it looks like within the coaching model that we use. As well, joining the team are part of our team are 2 former educational assistants who are now supporting a role of being educational support coaches. So the model really is that teachers would work with teachers, so that peer-to-peer support and coaching, and educational supports assistants would get that support and coaching from our educational support coaches and team. And then we have an occupational therapist, Tara Krasco, who has also supports and provides input and planning in the team. So welcome to Jennifer and Rachel, and I'm going to pass it over to them.
Thanks, Carla. So as Carla and Cody mentioned, we are a division tier 4 support. So we work for the school division, but we come into school settings to work with school teams and provide coaching support. So that often means that we're working with a variety of school team members. So we're not only coaching classroom teachers, but also educational assistants. We're working with classroom support teachers and admin teams. We're also collaborating with service providers, so occupational therapists, speech and language pathologists that are involved with supporting the student. So we are kind of an intensive support that comes in, provides a short-term coaching support based on an identified need. And then we work to build capacity in school teams to sustain some of the things that we put in place. Something important that we do like to keep in mind is that even though we are a tier 4 kind of individualized, really targeted and intensive support for students, we do like to coach and support school teams to include universal supports whenever possible. So what we would like to do is to ensure that our support and our coaching is sustainable. So trying to create plans that work to improve classroom instruction, provide targeted supports for students wherever possible, and hopefully provide some transfer so that if a teacher or a school team has a student with similar needs in the future, they have maybe been empowered with some learning from our coaching to apply that forward with a future student or future situation or specific need. So yeah, again, so even though we are that tier 4 support, we do like to provide some information and planning around kind of lower levels of support required for students. Oh, thanks, Jen. Oh, it's not letting us click forward, maybe. Oh. Thank you. Oh, okay. Thanks. I can jump around a bit. That's fine. No. So we provide support to schools on a referral basis. So when schools are looking for our support, they would identify the type of support that they are wanting within our continuum of services. So that ranges from consultation to collaboration to coaching. So it works within a coaching continuum, and we have specified for schools and school teams what each kind of level of support looks like and what they might expect when they are making a referral. So the first being consultation support. So this would be when schools identify a specific learning topic. Maybe they want to learn about a key issue or a specific strategy that staff might want to know more about. And we could provide either some professional development sessions, work with the school team to kind of provide some knowledge about that on a consultative basis. So that's kind of the layer where we're just coming in, we're providing some background information or some learning to schools, and it wouldn't be centered around an individual student. So we don't require parental consent for that. So it's just really staff to staff. The next service that we would provide is a collaboration service. So this service typically is a shorter term support, one where we're working with school teams for 1 to 2 days. And this focus really is around planning and working together, either to support an individual student or a group of students with a similar identified need. So it does involve an observation. So either Jen or I would go in, observe the student, maybe engage in a PTM with a school staff to brainstorm some strategies that might work well for the student. And then we provide those strategies in a collaboration report. So the school team walks away with some information that they can try to support that student or that identified need. So the last and most intensive service that we provide is our coaching service. So that is, as Carla mentioned, kind of a longer term support. So usually it's around 10 to 12 days. The focus is on an individual student. So that's when we're going in and we have an individual student in mind that we are supporting and coaching the staff, so the teachers, the EAs, if there's EAs involved, and the school team in how best to support the student. So it does involve that observation. It involves direct intervention and modeling of strategies that would target and support the students' needs. And it does involve the entire school team. So we really do want to provide that capacity building for all school members that are involved in supporting that student. And this is also where our occupational therapist support comes in. So she would complete an assessment and report and any recommendations that would support the student with the identified need. And again, because that one is focused on an individual student, both collaboration and coaching require parent consent. So when schools are reaching out to us and asking for support, they're identifying what type of support would best fit their needs and best support their staff and the students that they might be working with. Okay, so a little bit deeper into our coaching process. So this is the most intense service that we provide. Again, it's that one that's around 10 to 12 days. And because it's rooted in our collaborative response structures, it begins with a programming team meeting. So we would have a PTM where school teams, so the school team members involved, so it would be the classroom teacher, EAs, if there are EAs involved with working with the student, admin teams and classroom support teachers, we would come together in a PTM and ask the teacher to identify the goal for what they would like support with. So really getting clear on understanding what their need is and what they're wanting coaching on is the starting point for any of our support. Then we move into that observation and data collection phase. So it really helps for us to know the goal that teachers are wanting to work on so that we can make observations in relation to that goal. So we spend a couple days just getting to know the school context, observing the student in their environment, getting to know staff, know the supports that have already been put in place for the student to kind of start off that cycle. Then the middle part of a coaching process would involve us starting to plan and implement supports that might address that identified goal, trying them out with the student, modeling them for the teacher and educational assistant. So starting to implement some things, and sometimes they work right away and sometimes they don't. So that middle part of a coaching case can involve some kind of some tweaks and improvements kind of as we go along, as we try to figure out what might work best for the school staff. Once we kind of have that plan in place, we do a reflection and phase out. So it's where the school, or where we are still there to provide support for the school team, but the school team has kind of taken on all of the implementation. So we're there to support and answer questions, but we're not directly involved in working with the student anymore. It just allows school teams to put things into practice and see how they're feeling with the process and the plan in place before we phase out and move on to another school or another case. And we always wrap up with an exit meeting at the end where we review everything that we've kind of put in place, and all school team members get to hear the plan. So our action approach that really helps to anchor our work is rooted in the work of Dr. Ross Green, Dr. Bruce Perry, among others. So kind of our framework that we're coming in with when we're supporting staff and students is that foundational principle of kids do well if they can. And if they're struggling, either with behavior or routine structures, it's related to an unsolved problem or a lagging skill, or it could be both. So often our work is to identify what that lagging skill is and how we can help students to develop the skills that they need in order to be successful in their school environment. So really approaching with that lens of what is the lagging skill here? What does this student need to develop? And how can we both help the student and coach the school team to understand how best to support the student in building those skills is a really important piece of our work. And then that piece also around understanding brain development and also that impact of developmental trauma and how that can impact student skill development is really important. So that's really related to the work of Dr. Bruce Perry and the neurosequential model as to how student skills are developed and how maybe adverse childhood experiences, can impact that, and then how we can provide interventions and supports to continue to support that development and that skill growth for students. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jen.
Thanks, Rach. Thanks for walking us through the process and how we kind of arrive at our work. So lots of our work is rooted into the acting out cycle. And so like Rach mentioned, we start with collecting a lot of data, and then this data is kind of easily plunked into this cycle that we use. And so most, if not all of our cases, this is kind of a framework we use to make sure our goal is at the center, and then all of the information we're getting is kind of used to direct our work within this cycle. So this helps to build capacity and understanding that behavior really is predictable. We're identifying the triggers in order to be proactive. So lots of our work is proactive strategies, and using this cycle really allows us to implement strategies that are proactive, which then are able to coach. Supports and interventions at the earliest phases. So down in that agitation phase is where we do lots of our work, and lots of our proactive work comes into that stage. Um, our team are all SIVA trainers. So myself, Rachel, Carrie, and Terry, we all are SIVA trainers for our division. And this allows us to have that kind of restorative practice lens and create some universal language within our division as we are coaching our cases, which is helpful. Again, so we start always with a goal. And so that goal is able then to be reflective in the data that we collect, and anchoring our work with all of the people Rachel had mentioned that we work with. So the occupational therapist, our EAs, admin team. This cycle is really helpful in making sure everyone's on the same page, because when we're working with Tier 4 kids, everyone's heads have to be at the table. And so this just allows us to be able to work closely with the whole school team. And creating common language, like even in our current cases, these are words that we use all the time, is like having conversations of what are the triggers? Are we in agitation? If we're in agitation, what strategies are we using? And that helps us to create some universal language in order for our coaching model to proceed. So we are talking always about lasting impacts, capacity building within our division. And so this is some reflection of our last year's cases. So last school year, we received 33 referrals. Of those 33, 26 were coaching referrals, and 7 were for collaboration. We walked alongside 90 staff members. This is not including administrators. So as Rachel said, we are always working alongside school teams, and that does include administrators and CSTs, teachers, EAs. We were welcomed into 14 schools, mainly supporting ELP to grade 6. We're not limited to that. That's just kind of where we spent majority of our time. We are welcomed. Rachel did a couple cases in our junior highs last year. We have been into our high schools, so that's just where we spent the majority of our time. And then our team presented 12 PD opportunities, and that includes SIVA, work around the acting out cycle, some of our top 5 strategies. I would say the acting out cycle, again, because it is something that is becoming quite common language as we work on cases. That would be something that we do a lot of PD around, because it is a helpful tool. Oftentimes, classroom support teachers then can use them to support the creation of their BSPs. And that can go into the student file. It is, again, like a nice graphic in order to support school teams and understanding that the behavior is predictable. So as we work alongside school teams, we always end and we collect data. So we collect data from our CSTs. We send out an exit survey. This specific prompt was from some work that we did with our CSTs. And so the prompt was, the alternative learning team helped me to learn and implement strategies that will allow me to support students with similar needs in the future. So again, we're always going into schools and we want to build capacity, and how can we think about this for other students or students that may come through our building in order to create an impact that is sustainable and lasting. So one of the quotes reads, while supporting one student may be the initial reason for the involvement, the team can leave a broader impact by demonstrating strategies that apply to a wide range of students and situations. Staff gain tools that they can use long after the initial support. So our hope is always to provide sustainable capacity building for staff so they can use strategies implemented through our coaching support in other aspects of their building. This positively impacts the sustainability. Helping school teams to understand how Tier 4 supports can be used for other students has created lasting impressions and skill sets in our buildings. So I'll read it, some additional feedback that we have received in relation to sustained impact, our solution-focused approach, and like Carla mentioned, uh, our work is really grounded in relationships, and it is quick, and lots of times, especially in those coaching cases, it's 10 to 12 days. And the teachers and staff we're working alongside have been working hard right before we've gotten in, and because sometimes there's a little bit of a wait. And so we want to honor where they're at, and those relationships are really valuable in our work as we go, as we move forward. So Alt is able to recognize and highlight strengths and builds capacity through relationships first, modeling, coaching right in the moment, and intentionally asking staff what they need. They respond promptly to teacher and staff concerns, offered real-time strategies, and took the time to debrief what was working well and what remained challenging. I do think lots of our work, we all arrive to work in certain stages, and so the debriefing is really important, and Rach and I are really intentional, and so are the ladies on our team, of what that debriefing looks like when you do maybe ride or carry out the entire escalation cycle. And taking time to debrief is foundational to the safety built in relationships and working with kids with complex needs. So this additional data illustrates the sustainable implementation of strategies through supporting all of our schools. So the ALT team is not just immediately responsive to the initial concern, but responsive throughout the process, staying solution focused and leaning into staff and student strengths. So again, that's just data collected from, at the end of our coaching cases, our EAs draft up an exit survey, and we send them out to everyone involved, including the educational support staff, administrators, and our classroom support teachers, and really anyone else who is involved in the case. Sometimes our family school liaison workers work alongside us, and so just wanting to be really reflective of the time in buildings and the relationships we made and how our team supported them, the school team. Okay, I think I'm handing it back over to Carla.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Rachel. We appreciate your sharing of our team's work, and we're definitely very proud of you and your team and the work you do for our system. So we have a reflection piece in our work always, and we've definitely learned some lessons along the way around how we can keep growing our model in order to improve service, but also what are some of the key elements to the work. And so collaboration is definitely key. The collaborative response framework definitely helps us to anchor good collaborative relationships and processes to do the work. But building trust and shared responsibility across roles always accelerates team problem solving and reduces feelings of isolation. When we work with kids that present levels of complexity that are drawing on tier 4 supports and strategies, it really is important to share responsibility. This is a place where we get exhausted in answers quickly. And so having all of the team members at the table, working through collaborative processes, sharing observations and data, brainstorming and problem solving together, and sharing responsibility of escalated and challenging behaviors is definitely a key part of this work. Capacity matters. Investing in structures that support internal capacity building and creates sustainable solutions is very important. So it's not a model where all of the skill set and knowledge rests with the central supports and centralized team. It is really important that we work hard to develop and support and model and coach and invest in skill building and knowledge development with our school teams, so that capacity ripples through, that we can work with other students, other teachers, to support our students who might be struggling within our continuum of supports and services. We found that flexibility is essential. And so while we have a predictable framework and model, no school and no context is the same. And so we do have to have flexibility within our work in order to meet the needs of each school site and make sure that everybody feels well supported in when we do come in to work with our school teams, our teachers, and our educational assistants. Our school teams and min teams are often exhausted at this point, and so making sure that we can be flexible to where they are at and the support they need is important. And then we have definitely found this year that there's some traction through alignment. So recognizing the importance of integrating both instructional supports and social emotional learning and behavioral supports together. So our intentional focus around joining our student services team, alternative team, and our instructional coaches together for shared learning, shared capacity building, and work and problem solving together has been an important addition to our model this year.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Carla, just with being mindful of the time and where we're at, provide a few summary points. Probably some have already been said, but reinforce some of what we would see as replicable, as well as advice for other system leaders. And at the end of the day, Jen and Rachel appreciates all you do to support our schools and our teams, and that the feedback process I see as an essential piece so that you can gauge how it is that you're entering into these collaborative partnerships with schools. You are a system resource that comes in and provides the support in time where they're looking for a second set of eyes or a thought. And I think one of the skills, we can talk about skills of training and the professional learning that you've taken, but your ability to help to show empathy, but at the same time remain solution focused and looking ahead is really a key characteristic that you provide at a time when schools are seeking that support. And the last bullet there says sustainability. You know, we as a system have been able to sustain this team because of the value that you bring for our schools and the students and families that we serve, as well as the teachers. And so even though the team has changed and evolved with individuals, I think the principles have remained the same. And so there's been a handover and effective leadership. Carla is providing that this year and working with the team to provide both a system level perspective as well as connect with you guys, and so ensuring that we have that pulse. So that would really be some of my final reflections here as we head into what would be a chance for others to reflect and process the information that's shared today. So just thank you to Carla, Jen, and Rachel for sharing that story. And the last one here, Danica, do we still have time is it still the plan to go into small groups? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
We'll give a few minutes just to debrief for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So we offer 3 questions here to help guide the conversation. Components of the story of practice that could be adapted or scaled within your school division. Proactive structures, partnerships, or process that might enhance your division's approach to supporting students with complex behavioral needs. And then the final one, adapting a lagging skills perspective when supporting complex behaviors, foster growth among staff and students across your division. I don't know if there's any specific one, but if the group has something they want to go with, that might be most relevant. That could be approach as well.
I think most of our breakout rooms are back, and I'll welcome Irene Donaldson from Wolf Creek Public Schools, who will take us through our next story of practice.
Thanks, Danica. Hi, everyone. I'm Irene Donaldson. I'm from Wolf Creek Public Schools, and Danica is my clicker for today. So I will get her to click. I'll try to figure out a more subtle way to do that. How about this? Wolf Creek, we have 30 schools, about 7,500 students, 760 staff members, and our geographical area is about 6,000 square kilometers. So if that is not a big division as compared to some divisions geographically in Alberta, but I would just say to those of you who can be at every single one of your schools in 15 minutes or less, please count that as a blessing, so that when there is a big behavior situation, you can be there quickly we don't have most of the time that privilege. Click. So in Wolf Creek, we don't have inclusion coaches, school-based inclusion coaches. Right now, administrators lead inclusion. So one of the things that we've been doing for a couple of years is we have 5 full-day admin inclusion cohort meetings where I bring one administrator from every school to central office, and we do a full day of teaching and skill development for our admin around inclusion. We do have an education services team. Half of that team, maybe a third, is inclusion based. So we also have other supports in our schools, like school social workers. We've got 4 school resource officers from one of our local police services, as well as RCMP that service our school. We have an in-house psychologist, a contracted psychologist. We contract a nursing company, and right now we are looking at how we can contract a psychiatric nurse to support some students with complex behavior needs. And we're doing that with some other schools, school divisions in our CASS zone, which is a really nice collaborative opportunity. So I'm going to present 2 different strategies that we do here in Wolf Creek. And the first one is SIVA for all. So our challenge or our area of need for this is we work really hard to have coherence through all of our schools. That includes foundational beliefs, approaches, opportunities, even I remember several years ago, internet connectivity was one thing that we tried to make equal in all of our schools. SIVA was another area where we wanted to do that. So if you're not familiar with SIVA, it's great to hear that other school divisions are using it as well. It stands for Supporting Individuals Through Valued Attachments. It's a 2-day program. It includes some really good preventative theory as well as defensive moves, is what we call them, but the emergency safety interventions. So one of the things that we decided to do when we brought SIVA in was we wanted SIVA to be how we do business in Wolf Creek, and that's how we refer to it. So we made the decision to train all school-based staff in our entire division. We also have 4 certified trainers out of central office, and I am one. When we made that decision, there's some complexities to it, but what we did probably over about 4 years is we would take 2 days, go out to a school on PD days and teach the program, certify everyone in the school. And yes, SIVA is similar but fairly different from NVCI. So that took us many years. What we did as well is we made sure that we were training all school-based staff. One of the areas where we got the most impact by having this approach was in training the admin assistants, because who never gets training like this? It's the admin assistants, and yet where do the kids who are having behavior or regulation struggles, where do they get put? They get put with the admin assistant while they wait for admin. So having the admin assistants in there really made it a whole school approach. It was fantastic. If there's one thing you get out of that, please train your admin assistants in something like this. We also expanded and we did modified sessions for bus drivers. I said that they are the sandwich. No, they're the bread in the sandwich of a child's school day. And they quite like that. But we really emphasized that they needed to know the same language and some, not all, but some of the approaches. We also do topic-specific sessions for school staff. So we'll go out and refresh on the moves, or we'll go over the self-care part of SIVA training on professional development days as needed. Some of the pros of taking this district-wide approach, when we've done other programs, we have trained only the people who are working with specific students. And what does, or in our opinion, what that did is it created islands of knowledge and skill. So then those were the only people who could really work with some students. Training everyone changed that. So it gave us consistent language and approach in all schools. So if a family is moving from school to school within our district, we all use the same system. It also increased capacity for all staff. So it no longer had islands of skilled staff. What I do like about it is all school staff have been taught the defensive moves, everyone. It also, when we started out, we were quite strategic. So we prioritized schools at the beginning that were early adopters, that we knew would get the word out that this is a great program, because when administrators talk to administrators, you want that good word out there. And there were some schools that we targeted because they needed it the most. So we were quite strategic in who was trained in those first couple of years. Of course, there's always cons. One of the cons was, for several years, we had to live with 2 programs in the division. So the people who were trained in CEVA, which was the new program, and those who were still operated under the old program. I would say that one foot in 2 different worlds, that period of time was well worth it in the end. There's also a financial impact of having 4 trainers and training all staff. And it was a considerable investment of time. It felt like that was all we did for years. But having more than 1 trainer was very, very essential as we went through this process. When I look back at it, one of the things that we've gotten better at over the last several years is to keep CEVA fresh for all staff. So we create pre-made CEVA spotlight presentations. They take about 10 minutes. It reviews a piece of theory and 1 or 2 of the moves. We then present that to our administrators, who then are required to include it in their PD day agenda and to go over it with staff. Yes, we trained all teachers, all admin assistants, all educational assistants, all social workers. We also included our school resource officers, and we've trained all of them so they know what school staff are trained in. Now we're at a point where we do updates and we certify staff who are new to the district. And even if they've already taken CEVA in another district, we still require them because we have added some slides. We've Wolf Creekified it, is what we call it, right? So it's our local context. We do recertify staff who are working in complex situations. We've made really good use of Teachers Convention, and I run a CEVA for non-certified staff. So we get all our new EAs for that part of the year in, and ongoing PD sessions for schools as needed. As we've done this, we've come to realize that there are situations where we need skills beyond CEVA. And so we have brought in safe management groups, SMG, crisis intervention training. And we're just starting on that journey, and that will not be the whole district, although that's what everybody now thinks is normal. And that some people think that's what we're going to do, but we're go slow to go fast. But I would highly recommend, even if it takes several years, like 5 years, give consideration to this approach for that increased consistency, staff preparation, and safety. Everyone in our division knows these moves and these strategies. The second approach that I want to talk about, especially for those of you who cannot get to every school in your division within 15 minutes, so you can't always be on site when something big is going down, or you can get there, but you weren't able to for whatever reason. It is really nice in complex behavior situations to be on site and lend that support to admin. And I'm speaking of situations where, you know, a grade 4 student is so aggressive and so violent on that day that admin are calling for police backup. They're calling for the police to come and help support. And it's big. So it would be great if we could provide that shoulder to shoulder support for admin during those highly complex behavior situations. But the reality for us is I can't get there often. So when we have new administrators, either new in the role or new to our district, we like to provide what we call a residency program for the new administrators in the world of inclusion. We go out, we set up times where we'll be at their school, we'll talk about inclusion. If they have to go do their own work, they do that. We bring our own work. So that's kind of foundational in what we do. We also like to provide in-person supports during complex situations when possible. Often we can only be on the phone. Even if I got in my car and started driving, it would be an hour and 15 minutes from my office to our farthest school, which for some of you sounds like the dream, but there's not continued cell phone coverage during that drive. And so then I wouldn't maintain that constant contact in those elevated situations. What we've started to do after major incidents is we offer to have someone from our team on site for the next block of time. Perfect. So when we do that, we do a couple of things that over time we've realized that these are essential steps for us. We set up a schedule of which of our team members are at the school on which days. So we had a situation, the student was incredibly elevated and physical, the police were called, and you can imagine the escalation for staff, the escalation for the administrator, just where their heads were at, the lack of feeling of safety for students and parents and staff in that building. So we wanted to be on site, but we already had meetings scheduled. We already had obligations. So I, for example, couldn't be out there for a week. I wasn't able to. So there were 4 members of our team and we split the days up. What you had to do then is we had to make sure that when I was out, I wasn't giving a different message or instructions or philosophy than somebody else from my team who might have been there on a different day. So we sat down and we drafted an internal, just for the 4 of us, we drafted a document to make sure in different situations, what messages were we going to give, what approaches, when were we going to suggest different forms of action so that we were consistent. Then we also developed another shared document for the 4 of us where whoever was out there on that day, before they left, they updated it with notes. Here, this is the escalation we saw. This is what the staff did. This is what I recommended. It wasn't super detailed, but it was enough so that whoever was there on site the next day could continue and they knew what had happened every day before they got there. We also ask admin, what do you need from us? Sometimes what they need from us is a chance to meet with their staff, right? Sometimes they need us what I call walking my title, you know, where you wear your lanyard, everybody knows the director or the assistant superintendent is in the building, and sometimes that's enough to drop some shoulders. Sometimes admin just need that time to discuss it and reflect and get out some of that emotion. The pros to doing this, and the longest we've done this was 2 weeks, and it was 2 weeks before teachers' convention. Everyone was so heightened in concern around the situation that we stayed out there for 10 days because then they had a whole week of not being in school. So what we found in the situations where we've done that is it greatly reduces anxiety and stress on staff, right? They know somebody from central office is there that help is in the building. It doesn't mean we have all the answers, but it clearly demonstrates our support and our understanding. You've never seen a group of people so excited to have a kid melt down as when you're in the building. Everybody runs up, woohoo, it's happening, let's go. We also, will cover the office or do things so that admin can go and connect with staff and students. It gives us opportunities for those coaching conversations and plan development. And we're also on site if the parents come in or other parents come in or we need to help support with some different staff. Some cons, that communication has to be there. Staff might believe that it's a lack of trust is the reason why we're in the building. I think that builds over time, that positive understanding and them just getting used to seeing you there. It has the potential to go wrong if our team wasn't connected, if we hadn't done that pre-work on our messaging, the steps we would take, and the day-to-day notes that could have gone really negatively. And it's additional workload. You're not in your office. You might have to cancel some meetings or change them to virtual. But it was definitely, we still had our regular job to do, and we made that work. If I'm reflecting on it and recommendations that I would make if you were going to do this, ed services on site approach, is make sure that your team and administration understand what's behind your offer to be on site. If they know that it's to support them and support staff, then they're much more willing to have you there. Sometimes there's the desire to say, oh, no, it's all good. I'm fine. I'm a good administrator. I don't need help. But once they realize that you really want to come alongside them to support, they're much more willing to have you in the building for those days. And they have to explain that to their staff. That's one of the requirements we had, was that they needed to make that announcement to let staff know why we were descending on their school. Relationships is huge. We have to have that trusting relationship with admin before the incident. If we don't have that trusting relationship and they are already heightened, it's hard to develop it within that situation. And we were really clear that regarding the student who was at the center of all of this, that we were not coming in to take lead. The student doesn't know us. We are not part of their trusted circle. We were there to coach administration and coach staff, and they were the ones who were going to be consistent in being lead with the student. I find if we didn't clarify that, there's the assumption, because we're from central office, we are going to step in first, and we would do that if necessary, but it's not what's best for the student. They don't know us. Okay, I felt like I talked really fast, but I have two different reflection and discussion questions for you. The first is regarding SEVA for all. What steps can you take in your division to ensure consistent understanding of behaviors and universal targeted supports for all school-based staff in your district, not islands of skill? We really moved away from that, and I would say we see the benefit of that all the time. For the education services on site, or whatever your team is called, how do you provide on-site support during or following major behavior situations? In our district, when there are police cars outside of the school and there's more than one, and parents know that there was no special presentation scheduled, word gets out pretty quick. And how are we going to support in those situations? I'm just looking at that question. The inclusion. Go ahead.
Sorry, Irene. We also had another question earlier from Livingston Range to expand or elaborate on the inclusion cohort days.
Okay. Yes. inclusion cohort days, I'll be very transparent with you. I was very nervous when I started because I thought the administrators were going to go, oh, I already know this. Why are you even bothering? It is fantastic. I run 2 cohorts, but the content is the same. So half the work for me. I run a pre-K to grade 6 and I run a 7 to 12. So it's the same content, but the conversations are incredibly different. The administrator, it's one administrator from every school. We've gotten to the point where they are so vulnerable and transparent, they're willing to say, I don't know. We do a couple of different sections in our full day meetings. We do what's on your plate, which is here's the things you need to do in the next little while. Don't forget, you have to do this, or this has come out. It's got all the links. I share the slide decks with them. We also do a section on admin procedures or legislation. We found that there were quite a few admin procedures that admin had not looked at or didn't fully understand. So one example that stands out for me is the fact that it's the administrator's responsibility to let the bus drivers know about medical or other significant needs that the kids who ride the bus have. I had somebody say to me, Irene, you need to do your job. My bus driver didn't know about the student's needs. And so then talking to them about it, they're able to catch up. We also do skill building, whether it be how to write an individual program plan for a student or essential services, a medical safety plan, how to do just a whole bunch of different things. We've also done a section where in Wolf Creek, we allocate EAFTE to the schools, and we ran them through a big activity where they got to be me, and I had fake schools for them to work with the data from. It was really good. The residency. So I hope that kind of answers your question, Livingston Range, and feel free to email me if you want to chat, and I can give you more information. The inclusion residency, it varies. So sometimes when my coordinators do it, they will set up one morning every other week for a period of time where they're just on site at that school working with the administrator who's lead for inclusion. I did one recently with a principal, and because of his schedule and my schedule, we just booked in times where I would go out for the morning. We have a shared document. The principal, who's new to our division, would put in his questions. I'd put in things I wanted to talk about. As we talked, we'd enter the notes, so it was an ongoing record. It could be procedures, it could be processes, it could be talking about specific kids, just helping them get off the ground with inclusion. Because I find with inclusion, if you're not confident and don't feel like you have all of the information, it gets so hard so fast, and then you're underwater. So we want to provide that early, consistent support. I also find that in doing that residency, it doesn't go on forever, right? You kind of get to a point where they know what they're doing, and you're more confident with that. They pick up the phone and they just call. And so it's developing that relationship, because I think inclusion is not about knowing all the answers. It's about what do you do when you don't know the answers, and getting them used to that philosophy. Did I miss anything, Danica?
No, I think that's good. I think we'll have time for another about 7 to 10 minute breakout session here. So if you want to snap a picture of the questions, it's just an opportunity to debrief the Wolf Creek story of practice. And when we come back, we'll open it up to the large group for any questions for either of our presentation groups today. So I'll give you about 8 minutes or so in your breakout rooms.
Perfect.
All right, welcome back. With 8 minutes left, I do just want to give you an opportunity to ask some overarching questions. If there's any questions or comments for either of the presentation groups, for Irene or the team from Medicine Hat. Public. Go ahead, Andre. You're muted. You're muted.
Well, I think I clicked it twice. Sorry about that. One question for the first group. How do you structure and deploy those 10 to 12 days? Is it like an in residency? Are they consecutive days or is it 12 days spread out? So just maybe hear more about how you structure that actual coaching session, please.
Yeah, sure. It is in residency, so we spend that full 10 to 12 days there. And often it is there's a teacher consultant paired with one of our educational assistant coaches. So we plan to stay there for a duration of that 10 to 12 days. One of our team members is always there. And then our occupational therapist, we pull in she just works a couple days a week. So we kind of pull her in maybe once or twice throughout the case as needed, depending on what we're working through. So yeah, it is a consecutive service. So once we have that PTM, we kind of plan to start right away and wrap up within that 12 days.
I'll just add to that too. So deciding on services, we have a referral form that comes to us through ed forms, and we basically case consult. So I meet with the team and we look through our referrals. We see who has consent in place, what their key concern is, what they've done already, maybe what the level of complexity and impact they're feeling that they're building, and then build out case planning from there. So decide what school we're going to go to next and what team to support next through just that case planning, looking at a referral list. We're always behind. So there's always about 10 referrals in and we're working on cases, right? So we do have to think about, where our complexities lie and where the system needs and school needs support the most.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, seeing none, I'm going to just pop in the chat, and I'll certainly follow up with an email to registrants as well. Just a moment, my chat is not working for me. There we go. Just want to refer your attention to this link in the chat. CASS developed an e-leadership guide that was published in 2024, particularly on the concept of classroom complexity. And I highlight it because it just so happens that Wolf Creek Irene has a story of practice within that e-leadership guide, specifically about her inclusion cohorts. So there's a video and a presentation in there where she highlights that story of practice. There's also a presentation from Christ the Redeemer about their ARC work that they've done from Pembina Hills and from Fort McMurray Public Schools. So it might be a valuable resource for you if you're not familiar with it. And so certainly on behalf of all of us here today in CASS, I do want to extend my thanks and gratitude to the team from Medicine Hat Public and to Irene from Wolf Creek. We can give them a virtual round of applause. Thank you for the time you put into today's presentations. And thank you all for devoting time on a very busy, winter afternoon. I know that your worlds are very complex and busy, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here today. As I said at the beginning, I will follow up in the next couple of days with a copy of the slide deck, a link to the recording, and I will let you know when the learning guide is finished and published. And if you're interested in, this topic even further, we have another webinar next Wednesday, the last one in this series about building that system-wide capacity. And so on that note, I get to give you the gift of 3 whole minutes of time. So maybe just enough time to catch up on an email or two. And I wish you a great rest of your day and take good care.